My favorite paper this week is about why we're obsessed with celebrities, and it tests the idea that by obsessing about celebrities, we become better friends to the people we actually know. It's a bit of a crazy idea, but I've always been really curious about why we obsess over celebrity culture. Like, it's widespread. Almost everybody does it. But why? Why? It makes no sense. A movie star has no influence on your life. Why do we obsess about who's breaking up with whom or all that stuff? I've always thought the answer is that it's a holdover from our evolutionary past. You know, you can imagine living in a culture where there was a monarch or a baron or somebody who had total control over society and who could murder with impunity and who really did have power over people. And in those circumstances, it makes sense to pay attention to the gossip and the ins and outs of who's cheating on whom and who really has power and all that stuff, who's fighting with whom. You need to know that stuff if you want to survive in those kinds of societies. Now we live in a society where Taylor Swift's mood doesn't really have a big influence on whether I live or die, but nonetheless, everybody's obsessed with what's going on with Taylor Swift. And so maybe it's just an evolutionary holdover. This paper, which is by Tyler Robinson and colleagues, published in the Journal of Social Psychology, tests a different idea. And this idea is that maybe we obsess over celebrities because by obsessing on celebrities, we become better friends. And this is based on the idea that parasocial relationships, where we feel an attachment to someone who doesn't know we exist, can help us have better empathy. And the place that's been shown before is when we read fiction. So if you read about Harry Potter, you feel really bad for him stuck in the cupboard under the stairs, and that helps you build your empathy. And it's been shown in a bunch of studies that people who read more fiction have better empathy than people who don't read fiction. So maybe when I obsess about Taylor Swift and how badly she's being treated by the media, I become a better friend to the people I do know because my empathy muscles are worked out. To test this idea, they took a bunch of undergrads, they brought them into the lab, and they got a baseline empathy score. Then they did an intervention and looked to see how it changed their empathy score. To measure their empathy score, to start with, they had everybody watch a video about someone with writer's block, and then they asked them a bunch of questions about what it would be like to have writer's block, and they could see there's variability in how much people can, identify with somebody else's emotional state. And that gives them their before image. Then everybody does this experiment where they take a few minutes to imagine a 3-day vacation with somebody, and then they take that empathy test again. And the 3-day vacation is either spent with somebody you really know, you imagine that, you say, okay, I'm gonna spend it with my best friend or whatever, or it's spent with somebody you don't know, a parasocial relationship. So I'm imagining a 3-day trip with Tom York, the lead singer from Radiohead, and what that would be like. And so I imagine it, then I write a thing about it, and then I go ahead and fill out a survey. But in addition to just doing real relationship versus parasocial relationship, they also did people you really like and people you really hate. And they got some interesting results. So if you look at this graph, the gray is the before score on that empathy test. And you can see it's the same for all 4 groups. That's not a big surprise. They should be all the same. But the black one is the after. And the one on the far left is how much your empathy goes up when you imagine spending time with someone you actually know. So it does give you better empathy if you imagine taking that trip with your friend that you know in real life. The next one over is slightly higher, but not as much. That's the celebrity piece. So if you imagine spending time with a celebrity you really like, your empathy score goes up, but not as much as if it's a real friend. And then the other two, which are down, are imagine spending time with someone you hate. And that's whether whether you know the actual person or whether you just know who they are from the news. If you imagine spending time with somebody you hate, your empathy score goes down because you kind of shut down and you don't really care about other people's emotions as much. So what this shows is that yes, being obsessed with celebrities does boost your empathy a little bit, but it's nowhere near as much as when you have a good friend. So I kind of like this paper. I think it's a neat take-home message. And if you want more like this, you can subscribe to my new newsletter called The Bat Signal. Thanks a lot.